Okay, so our first article for today is about Centrostephanus asteriscus. Centrostephanus asteriscus. Centrostephanus asteriscus is a species of sea urchin of the family Diadematidae. Yeah, I'm gonna need some help with that. Short one, we're already using text-to-speech.
Diadematidae.
Their armor is covered with spines. Centrostephanus asterocatus was first scientifically described in 1907 by Alexander Emmanuel Agassiz and Hubert Lyman Clark. References. This is what it looks like. Definitely a mouthful. Okay, but our next one for today is about Echizen-Omiya Station. Echizen-Omiya Station is a JR West Railway station in the city of Fukui, Japan. Echizen-Omiya Station is served by the Hokuruki Main Line and is located 22.2 kilometers from the terminus of the line at Echizen, Hanando, and 24.8 kilometers from Fukui. The station consists of one ground-level side platform serving single bidirectional track. There is no station building, but only a shelter on the platform. The station is unattended. As for the history, Echizen-Omiya Station opened on December 15th, 1960, with the privatization of Japanese National Railways (JNR) on April 1st, 1987. The station came under the control of JR West. Surrounding areas: National Route 158, Fukui Hanyu Elementary School. Yeah, okay, but our next article is Zelensky, just Zelensky. For other uses, see Zelensky disambiguation. Zelensky, or Zelensky, Russian, is a masculine surname, a Russified form of the Polish surname Zielinski, meaning the color green. Its feminine counterpart in Russia is Zelenskaya or Zelenskaya. An East Slavic surname of the same etymology is Zelensky, notably worn by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, likewise for the Polish surname Zelensky. Notable people with the surname include Corneliu, Daniel, Dean, Edward, Elizabeth, Indrik, Jeff, Leo, Nikolai, probably, maybe, Paul O., Wilbur, all with the last name Zelensky. Wow. Well, this is very conveniently timed. The origins of Czechoslovakia. The creation of Czechoslovakia in 1918 was the culmination of the long struggle of the Czechs against their Austrian rulers and the Slavics against Magyarization and their Hungarian rulers. Also, as a note, it says that this article needs additional citation for verification. Please help. Unsourced materials may be challenged and removed. The ancestors of the Czechs and Slovaks were united in the so-called Samos Empire for about 30 years in the 7th century. The ancestors of the Slavics and the Moravians were later united in Great Moravia between 833 and 907. The Czechs were part of Great Moravia for only about 7 years before they split from it in 895. Furthermore, in the second half of the 10th century, the Czechs conquered and controlled western Slovakia for around 30 years. That was the last time the two nations were united, and the Hungarians had conquered Slovakia by the 11th century, but the Czechs maintained their own principality, a kingdom from 1198, of Bohemia from around 900 to 1918, so yeah, they were around for a good fat minute. And both Czechs and Slovaks struggled against powerful neighboring peoples, Germans in the case of Czechs and Hungarians in the case of the Slavics. See History of the Czech Republic and History of Slovakia. Contacts between the Czechs and the Slovaks arose in the late 14th century when Slavics started to study at the University of Prague. In the 15th century, with the campaigns of the Czech Hussite armies to Slovakia, and in the 17th century, when Czech Protestants fled to Slovakia between the 15th and the 18th centuries. Some educated Slovaks used written Czech as well as Slavic and Latin. Serious history of the Slavic language. The Czechs and Slovaks were also formally united in 1436 to 1439, so 3 years, and 1453 to 1457. So they were broken up for 24 years. And when Hungary, including Slovakia, Bohemia, and other Central European states, were ruled by the same kings. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, also, as a note, it says this article may be confusing or unclear to readers. Please help clarify the article. There might be discussion about this on the talk page, April 2009. At the end of the 19th century, the Czech and Slovak situations were different because of their overlords, different stages of development within Austria-Hungary. The Austrians in Bohemia, like Hungarians in Slovakia, the only common feature was Bohemia's status as the most industrialized part of Austria and Slovakia, albeit itself to different degrees. In Bohemia, a vigorous industrial revolution transformed a peasant nation into a differentiated society that included industrial workers, a middle class, and intellectuals. Under the influence of the Enlightenment and Romanticism, the Czech national revival led to the establishment of the National Museum in 1818 and the National Theater in 1881. Moreover, some Czechs were making political demands that included the reconstitution of an autonomous Bohemian kingdom. The Czech cultural and political achievements were vigorously opposed by Bohemian Germans, who feared losing their privileged position. On the eve of World War I, the Czech leader Thomas Masaryk began propagating the Czechoslovakia idea, namely the reunion of Czechs and Slovaks into one political entity. The Slovaks, on the other hand, had no form for political expression within Hungary, and their national revival was less marked. Slovakia was not industrialized until the end of the 19th century. The Slovaks remained mostly rural people, led by a small group of intellectuals. After the creation of the dual Austro-Hungary monarchs in 1867, a strong national revival began in Hungary, severely repressing that of the Slovak people. By the eve of World War I, the Slovaks were struggling to preserve their newly found national identity. Around the start of the 20th century, the idea of a Czechoslovak entity began to be advocated by some Czech and Slovak readers. In the 1890s, contacts between Czech and Slovak intellectuals intensified. The Czech leader Masaryk was a keen advocate of Czech-Slovak cooperation. Some of his students formed the Czechoslovak Union, and in 1898 published the journal Hlas, The Voice. In Slovakia, young Slovak intellectuals began to challenge the old Slovak National Party, but although the Czech and Slovak national movements began drawing closer together, their ultimate goals remained unclear, at least until World War I. The Czech and Slovak national movements struggled for autonomy within Austria and Hungary, respectively. Only during the war did the idea of an independent Czechoslovakia emerge. And this goes into World War I from 1914 to 1918. Main article is Czechoslovak legions. At the outbreak of World War I, the Czechs and Slovaks showed little enthusiasm for fighting for their perceived respective enemies, the Germans, the Austrians, and the Hungarians, against fellow Slavs, the Russians, and the Serbs. Large number of Czechs and Slovaks that defected on the Russo-Polish front and formed the Czechoslovak region, organized by Milan Rostislav Stefanik, a Slovak astronomer and general of the French army. Masaryk went to Western Europe and began propagating the idea that the Austro-Hungarian Empire should be dismembered and that Czechoslovakia should be an independent state. In 1916, together with Edvard Beneš and Milan Rostislav Stefanik, Masaryk created the Czechoslovak National Council. Masaryk in the United States, Stefanik in France, and Beneš in France and Britain then worked to gain Allied recognition. When secret talks between the Allies and Austrian Emperor Charles I collapsed, the Allies recognized the Czechoslovak National Council in the summer of 1918 as the supreme organ of a future Czechoslovak government. On the 22nd of October 1915, Czech and Slovak representatives in the United States signed the Cleveland Agreement, endorsing an independent Czech and Slovak federation with national autonomy for the Slovak people. This was followed by the Pittsburgh Agreement, signed on May 31st, 1918. Masaryk signed this on the 30th of May, and the latter envisioned a plan for a unified Czechoslovak state in which Slovakia would have its own assembly. In early October 1918, Germany and Russia proposed peace negotiations. On the 18th of October, while in the United States, Masaryk issued a declaration of Czechoslovak independence. Masaryk insisted that the new Czechoslovak state include the historic Bohemian Kingdom, containing the German-populated borderland. On October 21st, however, German deputies from Bohemia joined other German and Austrian deputies in Austrian parliament in declaring an independent German-Austrian state. Following the abdication of Charles I on 11th of November, Czech troops took control of borderlands. Hungary withdrew from the Habsburg Empire on November 1st, and the new Liberal Democratic government of Hungary under Count Mihály Károly attempted to retain Slovakia with Allied approval. The Czechs occupied Slovakia, and the Hungarians were forced to withdraw. The Czechs and Allies agreed to the Danube and Ipel rivers as the boundary between Hungary and Slovakia. A large Hungarian minority occupying the fertile plain in the Danube would be included in the new state. Yeah, that's the origins of Czechoslovakia. I'm sure that plenty of people were familiar with a certain part of that in great detail, but I did not know that they were that ancient. This is where they are in the world. Or at least this is the Czechoslovakian land inside Austria-Hungary, 1911. This is the spread of the different peoples living there. I don't know exactly what to call them. It's the origins of Czechoslovakia. Oh, well, we got a super short one here. We got Terradas. Terradas. It's a Spanish surname. Notable people with the surname include Bartolomé Terradas, Dolores Terradas, and Esteban Terradas. Bartolomé was a Spanish footballer, was a Spanish footballer. Dolores Terradas is a Spanish teacher and politician, and Esteban Terradas was a Spanish mathematician. See also 2399 Terradas.